Hi there and welcome back to Station Road. Now today's video is going to be a little bit unusual. There is a sort of montage of some video footage plus also some still photography, and it's all about this engine shed. Now this is a Scale Scenes downloadable kit that I've been working on for almost the last month now, and it's been occupying our dining room table, much to the family's disgust. Now the reason I have come about to build such a kit from Scale Scenes is, well, two reasons. Firstly, I wanted a particular style of engine shed for a certain area of the layout, and this was really very close to the style I wanted without having to go and scratch build something. And secondly, because I'm quite a fan of the Metcalfe kits and have done quite a number of videos on the Metcalfe kits, I had a number of people asking me, have I ever tried a Scale Scenes kit? So that is reason number two. So it was quite a big build, took quite a considerable amount of time to complete this, but hopefully in this video you'll sort of get an idea of how certain components of this Scale Scenes build took place. Most of it followed the instructions that are provided when you download the kit, but there are a few little customizations that I have actually done here, and they may be worth looking at. So I will have my coffee and let's run the tape. So in order to produce the scenario I want, which is for 6 ridges of the roof, so essentially we end up with, well, 6 windows down the side, double road, so it will be 3 times the printing. 18 pages, it will be 54 pages of A4 prints. So this is the extent of all that printing, and I'd gone ahead and mounted the prints that needed to be on card, and then there's also actually the printing which is just on the paper itself. And one of the things that I actually came across after I'd printed everything is not all of it actually needed printing for my particular project. So because I'm only doing 2 roads, I discovered that I only needed half the amount of roof, and also tucked in towards the end of the PDF was for a series of sidewalls without windows. Now I decided I wanted windows down both sides, so I didn't actually need any of that either. So despite what the little blue box says on the front page of the PDF, it's definitely worth checking out all the pages and doing a wee stock take on exactly what you need, because you could potentially save yourself a few pages worth of printing. So here I'd started pinning up the printed out pages to spray with a matte clear finish. This is recommended as part of the instructions, and I think it does definitely help, because it means that you kind of avoid scratching the print or damaging it in any way. It just also makes it a little bit more durable when working with the actual construction. And this is the stack of cutting that was about to be started, and it is quite a bit. It's an awful lot of cutting, and it resulted in, well, a few blisters and multiple blade changes of the craft knife. Now in terms of the cutting, I'd say the most difficult components were where something had to be cut out from the inside of a shape. So in other words, the windows were quite tricky to do. One of the other aspects that I sort of did want to point out with these downloadable kits is, as I went through the cutting process, I kind of really felt that there could be some improvements in the layout of the actual elements. And in this example here, we have these right and left side structures for the roof vents, and the way it's laid out within the actual sheet didn't really make sense in terms of cutting. So the way the vents are laid out on the two bottom items, they've paired them up per vent. Now I guess it makes sense in that respect, but it would have been so much easier if they had just paired them up per side, in which case you're actually saving yourself cutting time and saving yourself blades. And I actually found this throughout the PDF plans where they could have ganged certain elements and items up together so that they could share the same cut line, and it would have saved an enormous amount of time and blades if that had actually been done. So one of the other more complicated aspects that I came across during this build was how to get the walls perfectly square when it comes time to add the roof. So what I did here is I actually just cut out some styrene blocks, of course cutting them out absolutely perfectly square and to the absolute perfect dimensions. I then therefore used that to sandwich in between the walls and clamp them into place, so that when it came to attaching the roof on the top, that everything was true and square. And you'll note that I've used some handy paper towel there to protect the surface of the brickwork. So we had one styrene block at this end, and then we had another one clamped at the other end, and you can just see up there in the top corner the roof panels all prepared and ready to go and to be glued to the ridges of the walls. So in terms of the lighting, I've just simply used yellow LEDs. Now they're just the standard LED, they're not like the tiny little wee ones. I've basically just gone for what I actually had available in my drawer, and I know that some people might have a bugbear against using LEDs inside an engine shed and not looking too authentic looking, but I sort of thought, well, how can I possibly make the LED look a little bit more in keeping with the engine shed? And essentially really at the end of the day I sort of wanted to put some kind of lampshade over this and was trying to figure out what might work the best. And what I've actually come up with, and this has worked out quite well, is I've just used these things. Now these are basically screw caps, so for anyone who's a joiner you'll know exactly what these are, and then of course you may well be aware of them in your joinery in your house. They basically cover up screws in cabinetry. So we have the base plate, which the screw would go through the hole that's in there, and then you'd simply put this cap over the top and it would nicely hide the head of the screw. Now initially I was thinking I'll actually use this part of the screw cap and drill two tiny little wee holes in the top that would thread the pins of the LED through. But when I actually bought these items, I actually found that I quite like the shape of this part here as a potential shade. So this is essentially what I've used. So basically I just sort of painted up a bunch of these and then just simply with a bit of glue threaded the LED through here, and then you sort of end up with kind of, you know, a bit of a lampshade on the end of the LED. So in terms of actually installing the LED lights, there's a central girder that run down the length of the engine shed, and I thought I could straddle each pin of the LED either side of this strut and then solder copper wire along each side. So in this view here I've basically marked out exactly where the LEDs are going inside the shed, and I've basically wedged them either side of a thin piece of MDF There's just 3mm, something that's similar in thickness to the actual roof struts or girders that are inside the shed, and just pushed them down over the edge of the MDF. So I've kept the pins intact. Of course, one of the key aspects here that I had to consider is the LEDs are pole sensitive, so they have to be all around the right way. And in this scenario, of course, the LEDs will all be in parallel in terms of a actual circuit. So here I've clamped the copper wire, which is actually running across the terminals on both sides of the LEDs, and you can see at the far right hand end I have soldered one of the terminals to the copper wire, and there is a close-up of that. So with the copper wire now soldered to all the terminals, we now have pretty much a pre-assembled lighting structure which we can then fit inside the shed. So as you'll see, the other side is also soldered as well. So very carefully the lighting structure was then slid off the MDF template, and then at that point I was then able to trim the pins, and we can just see here the pins have all been trimmed off, and I've just temporarily hooked it up to a 9-volt battery with a resistor just to make sure everything is all working. So I then did a test fit of the lighting structure, and as you can see, this is how it all works. So it slips in over the support posts and down onto the rafter beams or girders. So here you can see the wires are running either side of the actual rafter beam, and when this is permanently fixed in, the lights will be glued to the underside of those rafter beams. So this is just a test fit. What I actually did after removing it is I did paint the copper wires black, and also the top of the lights as well with a spot of black paint, just to disguise it amongst the roof rafters. And that is the end result of the lighting, and I think it's come out reasonably well. So when it came to the base of the engine shed, so essentially the hard standing and also the inspection pits, I went as far as the inspection pit construction in terms of the scale scenes instructions. So basically I built up those 2 pit areas as per their instructions, and that's where I sort of went off track a little bit, because this will be another one of my construction builds where I can remove the entire building and also the hard standing from the layout. This is just simply so if I ever had to move the layout, I can just take everything off the top of it and pack that up separately. So what I've done here is I've actually marked out the area which will be cut out of the existing baseboard with this MDF panel, which is 5mm MDF with 2 slots basically cut out of it, which is where the inspection pits are fitted in. So because I've done the base of the engine shed in this particular way, I've had to pack out the cardboard within the area around the inspection pit so that I can actually get the same height for the rail. So it's basically matching the thickness of the actual sleeper. So it's essentially packing or padding which the hard standing is then glued to, and you can see on the outside there on the cutting mat we have the hard standing cut out and ready to go. I have assembled this in such a way that the building will actually sit over and around the hard standing. It's not going to actually sit on top of the hard standing. So in a way the hard standing is kind of up and recessed inside the actual engine shed, hence why the edge strips that you can see have got cut out notches where the column walls come down, and also there is gaps in the middle here where the rafter support posts actually come down and will actually go through the hard standing. This can actually be seen if we go back to this image here. The central hard standing panels have got little holes cut in them, and this is actually where the rafter column supports actually go through the hard standing. You also see in here we've got some dropper wires just barely visible there underneath the rails, and this is all wired up into a terminal block. Now you can see I put in some wooden bracing under this because it's only 5mm MDF. I certainly didn't want the MDF warping in any way, and it also helps for me to assemble the entire unit without worrying about pushing the inspection pits out of their slot. So we have the track wired up in 2 locations, and all of that wire is hooked up into this terminal block. There is another spare set of terminals there which will be for the engine shed lighting. And here is the end result. I've now added some wee warning signs to the outside of the building. Not sure whether they're actually all that readable, and I've also rather than using the cardboard downpipes that are provided by Scale Scenes, I've actually used some small round styrene and painted it black. So here we have the interior, and some people have asked from the Facebook page what items I've used in here, and in the foreground here there's a small workshop bench which is a Kirby product. It is HO, but I sort of thought I could probably get away with it reasonably okay. And then the workshop guide down the next column is using a drill press, and that is another Kirby HO item, but it seems to fit in okay. Further down we have the shelving units. Now I think that's actually a Fuller product, and it's actually a single scaffold which I basically chopped in half, turned it into 2 shelves and added some more shelving into it. And the rest of the stuff that's in there, or the remaining clutter, is just simply random bits of plastic kit that I have saved and kept over the years. So I have a wee box that's just full of scrap kit set items from plastic kit sets, and I just sort of reassign them. We have over here some drums, so there's various sort of oil drums dotted around. Interesting sign on the wall here, or poster that I put up. I'm not quite sure where you can see it in there, about wearing high vis. And then all the clutter that's on the shelving units is just bits and pieces of plastic sort of kits that got left behind, left over, and I've repainted them. So the lights have worked out quite well. If I really wanted to sort of go down a little bit more detail, then maybe I put metal wire cages around the outside of the lights, and that would probably make them even look more sort of authentic. But overall, I think it's come out really well. It's a good result, and it will end up looking, I think, looking pretty good on the layout, and it'll be great to get it set into the baseboard, and we can get some locomotives running in and out of this engine shed. So there we have it, the Scale Scenes Northlight engine shed kit. I'm actually really happy with the end result. Yes, it took a lot of effort. It took a long time, it took up a lot of dining room space, and it did actually cost over $100 in materials and equipment and tools. But the end result and the architectural style that I was after for this particular engine shed is come out exactly how I wanted it, and it's a very good end result. So we'll leave it there for now. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank all my subscribers and all the new subscribers that have recently joined this channel, plus everyone who's added comments and feedback to the videos. It is absolutely brilliant. I totally and utterly appreciate all of the input that you have with the Station Road channel. So it's bye for now, and I will see you next time.